Everything I'm going to talk about in this video are mostly things that the game already tells you. However, I do have some other tips that I think could be helpful, or at least ways to help you approach combat differently. This game is not Dead Space, and I think it gets compared way too harshly to it. It was inspired by Dead Space and created by one of the minds behind it, but it cannot be played like Dead Space. This is very strongly a melee-based combat game. The guns are only there as a support to the melee. It needs to be said, though, that these are my opinions and you may not agree with them, and that's perfectly okay. If you do have any tips, though, that I don't mention, please comment them below. Also, keep in mind, at the time of making this video, the game has only been out for a week, so depending on when you're watching, some things may have changed. The first thing I really want to talk about is weapons. As I said, this game is a spiritual successor to Dead Space. It is from the mind of Glen Schofield, who was a co-creator of Dead Space. However, this game really focuses on melee combat, whereas Dead Space was pretty much just gun combat. I would strongly recommend, at least for your first playthrough, to only use the guns that the game gives you. Those would be the hand cannon, which is the BI-55 pistol hand cannon. And then about halfway through the game, you'll get a gun called the riot shotgun. The other guns that you obtain through schematics are not worth buying, in my opinion. This one especially. Again, my opinion. And I have not fully upgraded it, but for your first playthrough, I would 100% recommend sticking with these two guns. The main reason why I say to only stick with two guns is because the game severely lacks inventory space. You only start the game with 6 inventory slots, which are these 6 here, and then about halfway through the game it goes to 12 slots, so you have these other 6 here. But that's it. There's no upgrades for inventory that you can spend credits on, so the more weapons you have, the more different types of ammo will be dropped, and your whole inventory will just be filled with different types of ammo. Weapons also take time to be swapped, as the two handguns use the same weapon frame. I can show you, for instance, just like this. So this is the gun that I currently have equipped. If I want to use this pistol, I have to do this, and he pulls the front of it off and puts that on. So you can have them both loaded, but it takes too much time to switch your weapons during combat, especially. So say you use all your ammo in this gun and you want to switch to this gun, you can't. If you just tap left on the D-pad, it'll bring up the shotgun. If you tap left again, it just goes right back to the hand cannon. But if I wanted to, say the hand cannon was out of ammo and I wanted to switch to this, I have to tap right and then go up and then tap this. He swaps, and it takes way too long. It's not possible to do that during combat. So again, another reason why I suggest to only stick with 2 guns at a time, and you really can't go wrong with the hand cannon and the riot shotgun. They're also just not worth the credits. As the time of me making this video, there is no New Game Plus. It is planned as far as I know, but you can't max everything out in one playthrough, so it's way more worthwhile to only focus on your melee weapon, your 2 guns, and your grip. Now, for upgrades for the hand cannon, I would recommend doing everything here except for the boom bullets one. I did it, but I honestly kind of regret it. It cost 2,700 credits, and it adds an alt fire that fires an explosive round. And honestly, I don't really think it's worth it. When you're aiming, you would tap L1. If you're playing on PC, I would assume it would be the right click. I'm not sure though. Don't hold me to that. But and it will shoot a explosive round, and it takes 5 bullets when it shoots that. So it's just, and it doesn't do that much damage. I mean, it shows that damage going way up, but I really don't think it's that significant. And honestly, you could use your credits elsewhere. So get everything but that. For the riot shotgun, I would recommend getting everything. This is just a earlier save, but I do have this on when I had finished the game, and this is incredible because it's not an alt fire. It just automatically makes the weapon's projectiles explode shortly after impact, so it's just really, really, really good, and it's really worth getting. So I would definitely recommend that. The thing just basically becomes I mean, it just blasts limbs off. It's wild. Definitely go for that. You definitely want to get all the melee upgrades. I would definitely go for damage first. Then I would go for your this column here, like the increased velocity, the block plate, and then the targeting module, and then the blocking one is good. I don't really block that often in this game, if I'm being honest, so I didn't really feel like that was worth it. I did have this one by the end of the game too, but I never did do this one just because for one, I used my credits elsewhere, and I just didn't feel that I needed it. Also, your grip. I mean, I would go for your capacity, and then I would also we'll go for velocity first. Absolutely velocity first. This is amazing. If you launch, you pick up a infected enemy, whatever, and you launch them at a wall, they will most likely die. So it's pretty amazing. So definitely get that one first, and then I would get the energy upgrade max, and then you can get the recharge speed if you want as well. So those are the upgrades I would recommend. Never ever 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 buy ammo, and never ever 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 buy health. It's a complete waste of money. You will find plenty of them just by playing the game. Do not waste your money on it. When it comes to selling, every time you come to a reforge, always sell your calibrators that you pick up, your CPU printers, any of the things that sell for a lot of credits. Always, always, always sell them, so you always have your inventory space. And if you have ammo, like say, I never really used this tactical pistol because I didn't like it, so I would always just sell the ammo because there wasn't any need for me to carry it around. And sometimes you'll have like 3 or 4 health injectors. If you need that extra 100 credits, just sell one of them because you'll get another one pretty shortly after, so don't worry about that. Another quick thing that I would suggest doing is going into your combat assists and turning the QuickTime event to a single press. Unless you like mashing buttons and whatnot, I would highly recommend doing that. It just makes it so much easier. And there's a lot of times if you get grabbed or whatever, you just tap the button and the sequence ends. There's just no point in it. Nobody likes doing QuickTime events. I don't know why games put them in, but I would just suggest doing that. You don't have to, just a suggestion. Now, when it comes to combat, this part of the game is when you first are informed about how enemies can mutate, and if you see them start to mutate, you should shoot the tentacles because they get much, much stronger and way more dangerous. So this is just a tutorial that you come across. It's still pretty early in the game, but yeah, it basically forces you to fight the mutated one. You can't kill it early. So anyway, that out of the way, melee should be your main form of dealing damage. When an enemy is attacking and you want to remember what the game told you and dodge by holding the left analog stick to the left or right. It does not matter where you start. You can start it to the left, you can start to the right. It doesn't matter what your timing is. As long as you hold one way or the other, you will dodge the attack. You also have to alternate or you will get hit. There is a timing window for a perfect dodge. I honestly don't know what it is, but there is a timing window. It's not necessary, and it really doesn't give you much of a benefit. There is a trophy or achievement for doing it 5 times, but really it just briefly slows time down. Holding back or down will block, but I almost never used that feature. I either just sucked at it or I felt like it didn't really negate damage that well, so in my opinion you're just better off dodging. Enemies will either attack once, twice, 3, or 4 times in a row, and you really can't attack through the enemy attacks. They don't really stagger from it, and they will just damage you and keep attacking. So dodging is extremely important. It's pretty obvious if they're going to combo, but it doesn't hurt anything to keep switching left or right until they stop attacking. You're never negatively affected for holding dodge when it's not necessary. Once you have a window to attack, use 1 or 2 light attacks, and then if you have unlocked it, do a heavy attack to knock the enemy down. At this point is where your gun comes in. Once you dealt a critical hit or knocked an enemy down, there will be an audio indicator and a crosshair appears on the enemy. Aim and shoot without moving your crosshair. It will auto-lock onto the enemy and deal a critical shot with your gun. Then you basically just rinse and repeat, dodge, melee, shoot. Now, these enemies are actually blind enemies, and it is best to just sneak around and stab them, but for combat purposes I was just killing them loudly just because whatever. But anyway, combat does get a little trickier when you have multiple enemies coming at you. The enemies are pretty patient though, and they wait their turn. You very rarely get smacked from behind. If there's an enemy behind you that wants a piece of the action, they will grab you and spin you around. You will not take any damage from this, but now you will be focused on that enemy, so dodge and attack like normal. Also, do not forget about your grip and environmental hazards. I prefer spike walls over the grinder hazards, because you can swing your baton at the enemies on spike walls and they will drop items just like when you stomp dead enemies on the ground. Grinders or throwing an enemy off the map into the abyss will not give you any items from their bodies. If an enemy starts to transform, you want to immediately shoot them, like we talked about. It never really seemed to me like it mattered where you hit them, but try to aim for the chest area where the tentacles are erupting from. One shot should stop the transformation and the enemy will just die. If you fail here, though, the enemy gets much stronger and much more dangerous. The spitters are probably the most annoying enemy in my opinion, aside from maybe the exploder crawlers and the crawlers that turn invisible. They're like really fast. But I would suggest using the grip and throwing spitters into the void or into an environmental hazard to get rid of them quickly. There doesn't seem to be any way to avoid the stuff they spit at you, or at least anything I tried never really worked. Even shooting off their head doesn't seem to keep them from spitting. Lastly, it's pretty much impossible to run from combat, especially multiple enemies. Jacob is very slow and clunky, and with how dodging works and with the left stick, you're pretty much locked into combat when there's enemies in front of you, so you're better off using all the mechanics available to you and deal with enemies rather than try to run from them. Also, never try to heal during combat if there's enemies around you. It takes way too long. You're better off dodging and not getting hit and surviving that way than you are trying to heal, because if you try to heal, I guarantee you will die. And if you just focus on dodging and attacking the enemies in your window that you have to attack, chances are you'll make it through with like the sliver of health. So you don't have time to heal during combat. It's just not possible. Don't even try to do it. I have finished this game on medium security, and I do plan to do a maximum security run, as I do need to get the trophy for it anyway in order to get platinum. I did enjoy the game for the most part, but I will admit I'm not a huge fan of the combat. It can be super fun, but it can also be incredibly frustrating. Without spoiling anything, I will just say that for the quote-unquote boss fights, you pretty much throw everything out the window in regards to melee combat and rely completely on your guns to stagger them, and then you can get a couple smacks in with the baton. It's just odd how it goes completely against the melee combat mechanic for a few enemies in the whole game. Either way, I did enjoy the game, and I do hope the IP continues. I just hope they button a few things up and make the combat feel way less clunky. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully some of my tips help you with your time on Callisto. If you like this video, let me know, and check out some of my 100% Platinum Trophy playthroughs. I make tips videos when I feel like I have enough knowledge on the game and its mechanics to help others as well. Have a good one.